It's Coming Home podcast. Sounds a little bit like a sarcastic statement, doesn't it? Given how well we've been playing in this tournament. I've got the man, Clock and Curtis, with me this evening. How are you doing, mate? You feeling well? Feeling good?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
Good, good, good. So, unfortunately, it's not the happiest time to be an England fan. However, we did get a nugget of comfort this evening as we now know who we're going to be facing in the last 16. So, we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but we're going to start on the England Slovenia game. Before we get into it, Curtis, just your initial thoughts, mate. What did you think of the game?
Yeah, it wasn't a brilliant performance. I feel that we improved on the previous game. We did look
Mm,
better than the previous game, but it just kind of like summed up like we've had. I see myself. I'm less. I'm not necessarily a pessimist. I'm probably more optimistic than most England or Arsenal fans. But if I had to say overall, I would say like each group stage game has been kind of poor, and I was a bit disappointed that we didn't happen to get on the score sheet. So, which obviously we'll elaborate shortly. You know the reason as to
mm.
why we feel that is.
Yeah, no, it was a pretty poor game. A couple of moments in the game, there was a very good move that led to an offside goal, but there wasn't really much to write home about. So let's get into it then. We're going to have a look at the starting lineup. So he started with a very similar side, despite all of the discussions that we had over the last week. You'll have seen my podcast with Jamie Waffles Footy, where we talked about uh, who would start in the 11, how many changes he would make. And he didn't make very many, did he, Curtis, really? Just the one.
Yeah, I was really disappointed, like in terms of the starting lineup, because it seems like obviously I know we all can sit there and we can all be like armchair pundits, but it's kind of frustrating that we, the England, fans, Arsenal fans, have a better understanding grasping the game than someone who's an experienced manager who's been managing England for a number of years and also he's been managing, he's been a player as well himself. So it's just a bit like what I was frustrated at. The back four, not too much because obviously like Luke Shaw, he's not quite fit yet, so it's understandable that obviously Kieran Trippier will come in, and
Mm,
Mark Guehi and John Stones to be centre back, which is fine, and Carl Walker on the right, which is fine. My frustration come with that midfield again because Jude Bellingham was great in the first game, but it wasn't really that great in the second game. And I wouldn't have minded to see Jude Bellingham be dropped in the third game like what we saw yesterday. For me, obviously,
mm,
Declan Rice always usually kind of consistent. Obviously, the last couple of games he's not been at his usual standard, but for me, he remains as the main holding midfielder. What I'd have liked to
yeah.
probably have seen is probably Bellingham kind of dropped, but because obviously the last couple of games he's not been great. And then this other thing in terms of, to be fair, I was happy to see that Gallagher obviously was brought in to kind of play like a floating eight kind of role because obviously the last couple of appearances we've seen from Trent Alexander haven't been great. And then in terms what kind of frustrated me is this continuous this with this Phil Foden on the left hand side. Like it kind of frustrated me. But anyway, before we I guess get into it, maybe so yeah, I was frustrated with the lineup. I was frustrated with the line, and then in terms of also seeing Harry Kane start up top again, when I think the last couple of games he's kind of been quiet. I would have liked to see maybe an Ollie
Mm.
Watkins or Ivan Tony come in. To be fair,
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's it, isn't it? I mean, it was a disappointing lineup, I thought as well. I think, to make one change after that dreadful Denmark game, which, in my opinion, we should have lost, really. I think, we were very lucky to get a draw out of that. And for him to make just that one single change, I don't know, Curtis. I mean, to me, it's like you say, we are Arsenal fans, but we're football fans, and we have it seems, a better understanding of tactical formations and how things should be than Gareth Southgate does. And that seems like a troubling statement, given that we're in such an important tournament. Kane started again. We'll go through, we'll rate the players, but Kane started again with Saka, Foden, the attacking players, really. You've got Gallagher and Rice in the midfield, with Gallagher brought off on 46. So he didn't actually play very much of the game, just about half. Rice and Bellingham, and then he went with the same defence, as you say. Should we just start off with the goalkeeper? He didn't have much to do, did he? That's probably a straightforward 6 out of 10 for me. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Like, certainly, I don't think that our friend Jordan Pickford was troubled very, very much at all.
Mm, yeah, definitely. I think a 6 makes sense for him. Trippier, I don't. Again, I don't really think he was particularly brilliant. Did he have a good game in your opinion? Did you think he did anything particularly special?
I think he was all right. I think like 6 out of 10 performance. I think, without getting onto some of the other players a bit more, I think kind
Yeah,
of him stepping in to play left back like he has the last couple of games when he's typically a right back. I think he did okay. I think his performance was hard by some of the other players, but obviously we'll get onto those shortly.
yeah. Trippier, I would agree. I think with standard performance, didn't do anything too sparkling, but then didn't do anything too devastatingly bad either. We've got Mark Guehi. How do you think he did?
I'm really impressed with this guy. Honestly, the last couple of times I've seen him out in an England shirt, not just in
Mm,
the Euros, but even some of these. Because I know during the year, obviously we get these international friendlies, don't we, as well, that we get to watch. Like I'll be getting off at Upminster Bridge and I'm walking home and I walk past someone's house and I see it's on. Like of recent, I've started to kind of catch the international friendlies. I never used to really watch them much, but I've been really impressed the last couple of international friendlies I've seen him play, and also these last couple of group stage games. Certainly a player who excites me, not just at international level, but I'd love to see him in the Arsenal squad. Honestly, if we get the opportunity to bring him into Arsenal, because I think he could play left centre back and right centre back. To be fair, so certainly I think the last couple of England group games, he's impressed me more than Mr. John Stones.
Yeah, it's a good point, isn't it? He doesn't look out of place. I mean, we've got to remember that this is a guy who's not played in an international tournament before. In fact, I don't think he'd actually played more than maybe 1 or 2 appearances for England. He may have played in a friendly or so, but I think this was pretty much a guy who's fresh into England football setup. And he doesn't look out of place at all, does he? He looks like he fits in perfectly.
Yeah, if I believe rightly, I heard a comment or something said on whatever who was broadcasting the TV yesterday. They said something. It might have been only his full start with John Stones, it was something like that. And obviously, the previous games you've seen is mainly obviously like international friendly. So these only the last couple of games have actually been where
Yeah.
he's played in a competitive, Euro or World Cup kind of, game of, I guess, of substance, should we say?
Yeah, yeah, very good point there. He is very fresh, but he looks like he's always been in that England side. So that is a credit to Mark Guehi. What a player he's going to be. John Stones, the old dependable. Although he's still quite young, isn't he? John Stones, he's still a young man, but he's been around that England setup for so long. How did we feel he did last night?
I think it's an average performance. I didn't think he got trouble too much. For me, it'd be a 5 or 6 out of 10 max, probably a 5, just because I
Yeah,
felt he was a little bit lackluster,
yeah.
just yesterday.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Curtis, there. Yeah, a 5 out of 10 for me. Nothing special. Didn't particularly do a huge amount in the game. Let's move on to Kyle Walker. Again, a player who has been such a brilliant right back, as we've seen, much to our annoyance for Manchester City in the Premier League. But for England, of course, we get the full benefit of his services as England fans. I don't think he was particularly brilliant last night. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, another 6 out of 10, just slightly above average. Put a good performance in, but nothing too brilliant. Well, I was like amazed.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you there. I think I would go with a 6 out of 10 for Carl Walker. Now, this is an interesting one. We move on to Jude Bellingham. Now, I saw some stats today that Jude Bellingham did virtually nothing in the game. The statistics were very, very damning. I think he lost most of his duels, lacked forward passes, had 1 shot in the entire game, and it was pretty poor from him. And I think this is a new territory, isn't it? Because he's not used to being criticised. This is the England star boy, if you like, somebody that's been given so much praise, and rightly so, to be fair. But for me yesterday, it was a 3 or a 4 out of 10. Very poor. What do you think?
Yeah, I have to agree. It's a shame because of the first game. I thought it was brilliant. You know, the
Mm,
first game we saw against was it Serbia first? It was Serbia first before we saw
yeah, yeah,
Denmark,
Serbia, yeah.
and then we saw Denmark, Slovenia. And the last, he kind of kept his spot because this guy is proven, man. Like I wasn't really watching Jude Bellingham from the Dortmund days, but I know when I
Mm,
saw him, was it Euro 2020? It was played in 2021. I was like, this
yep,
guy's 16, 17. He's brilliant. And the last 3 years,
mm,
I've been watching him international level. Like England's been great. The season he's had in Real Madrid has been great. And yet it was
yeah,
disappointing, like because he has kind of like a versatile role where he kind of operates as like a floating eight. Because he can play 8 or 10, but for me, he's almost like
mm,
an floating eight, but kind of operates it as a false nine as well, kind of bit
mm,
behind the striker. But just it was a bit congested. To be fair, like to his credit, it's not all on him. Obviously, there'd be some other player performance we get on to, but there was
yeah.
obviously some other factors, some other players affected his performance. But yeah, like it wasn't the best game for Mr. Jude Bellingham.
No, no. I don't think I can go any higher than a 4, and I think that's just because he set such high standards for himself. Um, and there's going to be a lot of high expectations on that young man from now on. But yeah, 4 out of 10 for me. Pretty poor. Let's hope he can bring it back. By that I mean his form in the next game. So we move on to Declan Rice. Now, you and I both love Declan Rice, Curtis, for obvious reasons. He's an Arsenal boy. And how well did he do in our season just gone, 23-24? But last night, what were we saying for Declan? Did you think he was impressive?
No, it's sad really, but it's probably even though he's probably one of our better players the last couple of games, it's got to be a 5 out of 10. I'll give him 5 because of the effort. I feel bad giving him a 4. Obviously, naturally, we are a bit biased, but I'd give him probably a 5 out of 10 just because obviously, he did give it a go, but it just wasn't his best night for him.
Agree. Completely agree with you there. 5 out of 10 for me as well. Just again, a player that sets such high standards for himself, and when he falls below those standards, it's very easily noticed. Now, Conor Gallagher, he was the one change which I could have predicted because I can predict most of Southgate's changes. I'm afraid he's rather predictable. So Gallagher came in for Trent Alexander-Arnold, who hasn't worked out in that midfield role. I don't think he was very good. I thought he was poor, very poor. What did you think?
Yeah, similar. Like I was looking forward to seeing what he could do because whilst he's not been brilliant back at Chelsea this season, I think he's been back at Chelsea. When he had that loan spot, Crystal Palace, he was really really good. So this guy's got potential, and I was kind of looking forward to seeing him because obviously we've seen him have a few cameos recently for England, and I was kind of expecting that he's coming in to replace. And it was leaked a few days before the game that Gallagher would be replacing Alexander Arnold for the number
Yeah,
8 spot today. Also, not today, yesterday's fixture. So I was expecting a lot from him, and I kind of didn't really get it. So for me, it'd be a 4 or 5 out of 10 that he gave it a go. But and it says a lot the fact that obviously he was hooked at half time for obviously
yeah,
Maino to try and they brought Maino in to try and get a bit of control of the game. So
yeah, yeah. He was, yeah, he was poor, wasn't he? It was a shame because I've seen Conor Gallagher play, in very good performances for Chelsea, but he wasn't up to much yesterday. And of course, he was hooked at half time, pretty much. Let's move on to Phil Foden. He was also taken off at the very end of the game for Anthony Gordon. I'll let you lead again, Curtis. What did you think of Phil Foden's performance? Were you impressed?
no, what really frustrated me is this Southgate experiment because we know Phil Foden's not a left winger. Fair enough, he's left-footed, and we have seen people play on the left wing before. I know we had Saka play left wing back and left wing previously when he broke through under Emery, and then that
Mm,
it can actually work. But for me, he didn't really occupy the space, similar to what obviously our friend Jamie Waffles footy touched on that. Phil Foden, when he plays, it's almost like an overload in the midfield for Southgate. So he keeps getting drawn in centrally to try and assist out as kind of like a left 8 or
mm,
try and operate as a 10. So for me, I felt that we lost that left the left wing outlet we lost because what
mm,
happened was basically Pickford plays the ball out, it goes to Trippier. Trippier then tries to play it to Foden. Foden being left-footed, and he's got weak right foot, so he plays it back, obviously, to Trippier or to Stones or Gray, and then we try and get it through into the midfield, and then we kept playing it through to the right side and become very predictable. And what I was finding that midfield was getting too congested with Phil Foden keep dropping in to try and receive the ball. So then we had, you're then having Foden, Rice, Gallagher and Bellingham all trying to play intentionally in the midfield and become too compacted. So for me, Phil Foden is an 8 or a 10. He needs to play in that role and not occupy the left wing. So for me, it was a bit disappointed. He did a few good things. Obviously, he did provide an assist to Saka. It's just unfortunate that obviously Foden did break too early. I was trying to explain to my mum, because my mum was like, I was watching at the Tollington, shout out the Tollington, but when I got home, my mum was like, why is that goal ruled offside? It was a perfectly good goal. And I was like, no, mum. Like, when it comes to football, we have the offside rule. The ball has to be played at the right time. The attack has to be in line with the defenders, etc. If not, the attack has advantage, etc. So it's just unfortunate. Apart from a couple of that offside assist and a couple of other crosses, I don't really think Phil Foden did much, to be fair. So for me, I'll probably give him a 5 out of 10 to be generous.
A 5 out of 10, yeah, and I think that is generous, Curtis. And just back to the point about the offside rule, that's the hardest rule to explain to people that don't know football. Very tricky, that one. Yeah, Phil Foden. It's so frustrating because we know what he can do, and I think this is the problem that we've got with the England squad right now. We know these are good players. We know that they've got spark and talent and creativity, and we've got such good offensive options, and yet we just can't. We can't get it together. I mean, I was listening to Talk Sport earlier, and they said it's almost like something just isn't quite gelling. And I think that's a very good way to put it. There's just something missing, and it's just not working. So Foden, I will be generous as well. I will give him a 5, but he's certainly not worth any more than that. Harry Kane, again, I've had a lot to say about Harry Kane, and there will be people out there that say, "Oh, you don't like him because you're an Arsenal fan and you play for Spurs." No. Harry Kane, I'm sorry, has had a very poor tournament. We know what he's capable of. We know he's a great player. Even Arsenal fans, we're England fans too. So we support every player, as Jamie Waffles Footy said. We support every player who pulls on that England shirt. Doesn't matter who they play for in club football. Now, Kane has got a lot of strengths to his game. He's a finisher. He's clinical. He's one of the most clinical strikers in Europe. In fact, I think he was the most clinical striker in Europe last season with 52 goals for Bayern Munich. And yet, he's come into this tournament. I do admit we're not playing to his strengths. There's no doubt about that. We're not. But he's been very, very poor, Curtis. Very poor.
Yeah, it's disappointing because we know what the potential this guy has. Like, when he receives the ball, generally speaking, he's clinical. If he's in through on goal, what has disappointed at him the last couple of games, he just keeps dropping too deep to receive the ball. So then, you're resulting in a midfield of Harry Kane dropping deep to receive the ball. We've got Phil Foden trying to operate as a left 8. Then you've got Bellingham also there trying to operate as a false 9 or a right 8, and then you got Declan there. It's just becoming too congested. And then what I find that even when Kane has got the ball, he's struggling to bring in other players as well. So fair enough, if you're not clean for a goal, bring another player and try and set an opportunity up for them to score. It's kind of disappointing for me. I think he's kind of lost his pace and his fitness. I don't think he's fully fit coming into this tournament. Yes. And also maybe the year playing in the Bundesliga in Germany, where the pace of football and style of football is different in the Bundesliga compared to Premier, might be affecting him. So that's probably affecting him. Is playing in the Bundesliga in Germany with the style of play, and it maybe might be less intensive than playing if he was playing in the Prem. But for me, it's just the fitness, because a few people reported that apparently he's not been fit or he's recovering from an injury or something, which there might be unconfirmed reports, but yeah.
You make a very good point though, Curtis, because the Bundesliga is a slower style football. And this is why we see some of these players. I mean, you still got Aubameyang dominating in French football. of course, doing very, very well, scoring a lot of goals. So the Premier League is a very unique league in that you have to be at the top of your game in terms of pace, fitness, and all of those other metrics to dominate in the Premier League. Now, Kane has obviously moved on from Spurs. He's hit 30 now. I think he's 30 years old. Still got a couple of good years in him, but we don't seem to be playing to his strengths. And I think he's been very poor. And I said to Jamie in the podcast that we did earlier in the week that I would have started with Ollie Watkins. Now, we had a bit of a back and forth about should we play to Harry's strength or should we replace Harry Kane with the likes of Watkins. You've also got Tony, who I think is a better hold-up player. You've got options. I mean, Southgate, believe it or not, does have a lot of options. I mean, did you think he should have started the game?
No, not after he scored the first. He scored obviously the goal in the first game that we saw, and then he was kind of anonymous, invisible for the rest of that fixture. Then the second game, I thought he was really, really poor. So you know, so that see, so yeah, this recap. So Serbia scored a goal, and in the early on, then he was kind of an anonymous. Then we played Denmark, and I think he had a particularly poor game for Denmark. And I think a lot of us even said like, prior to the Slovenia game yesterday, we would have liked to see Mr. Watkins, Mr. Tony, just to bring something different. Because obviously, I know that obviously they're not necessarily, you know, overly clinical, but they have shown like, you know, Tony and Watkins when they get a chance they can score. So for me, and there's also other stuff that they can offer to, you know, good hold up play, bring other players in. I just find with Kane, he's maybe in that stage in his career where he can only just score when he wants the ball to his feet. So he'll either come in to drop in deep into midfield to receive the ball, or he want to linger on the edge of the box, receive the ball and score. But reality, sometimes you're going to need to score from balls in from behind, and maybe he's just lacking that pace, like as we've seen with other strikers, Haaland and other people in the Prem and other leagues, where you know that ball might be sprayed 30, 40 yards. You got to get onto the end of it. But even we've seen with like, you know, our friend Kai Havertz, when we played at home to Chelsea, you know, nice ball in from behind and scored. There's going to have to be times where, Harry, you're going to have to score like that. You can't always you can't be an Nketiah and wait to receive the ball, you know, to your feet and score. So, yeah, I was kind of disappointed not to see Mr. Watkins or Mr. Watkins or Mr. Tony starting. So, yeah, it's something Gareth's got to get right before. But then I think the problem with Southgate is he's too sentimental and he's too low, as we've seen like previous tournaments where we've seen always like Harry Maguire be picked, etc. So it's kind of disappointing. Or even, you know what, I wouldn't even minded seeing Cole Palmer start as a false nine, which I know is
been a really good shout.
Some people say it's crazy, and I might be crazy to say it. You might be crazy to say it. But to see Cole Palmer start as a false nine, when we see what this boy can do week in, week out at Chelsea, he can play cam, he can play false nine, he can play right wing. The amount of goals and assists this kid's got,
brilliant.
We should have just rolled the dice and maybe said, you know what, Cole Palmer, you play up top today and see what you can do, because I think you would have offered more than Harry Kane.
I completely agree with you, Curtis. And I've been saying time and time again on all of these shows I've been doing that Cole Palmer needed to start. He needed to start. He needed to start earlier in the tournament. And we'll touch on him briefly in a second because we'll have a little look at the substitutes. But completely agree with what you're saying about Kane. I think he's just too one-dimensional, and I think we have to change it. We now know who we're going to be facing in the last 16. I'm sure there'll be time to talk about that more comprehensively at another time, but we know we've got Slovakia. So a pretty decent draw. But Kane gets a 4 for me. I was not impressed. I thought it was very poor. Very, very poor. Didn't offer very much at all. And that's harsh, perhaps. There'll be people saying that's a harsh rating, but he's the England captain. He's your centre forward, 4 for me. So on to Saka. Now, we're Arsenal fans. We love him, obviously. I thought he wasn't terrible, but I still don't think he was particularly great. Would you concur with that?
Yeah, we're gonna have to take a bias hats off. You know, it's probably a 5 out of 10. He gave it a go, tried getting to his forward back. Yeah, you know, he probably tried having a few shots to target, a few crosses, but yeah, he wasn't his usual self. So it wasn't one of his better games. So for me, it's probably a 5 out of 10.
It's a 5. Yeah, it's a 5, and I would agree. Let's briefly go on to the substitutes. Anthony Gordon, I would suggest, did not have enough time to make an impression. He was brought on in the 89th minute, so we're going to have to reserve judgment on Anthony Gordon. I think Kobbie Mainoo, I think he did fine. I think he did quite well. What did you think about Kobbie Mainoo? Were you impressed with him?
Yeah, I've seen him a few times now. So, not just at international level, but even like I was at the Manchester United Arsenal game, and I was really impressed when I saw him there. That this kid that people have been talking about all season, and just think like for someone, especially because people say, "Oh, you don't want to bring him on because he's a holding midfielder, he's a CDM, central defensive midfielder," but he is kind of a progressive CDM. So when he's on, he's good at hold up play. He's good at attacking football, so he does offer something. And certainly if we manage to progress through the last 16 game, I wouldn't be against seeing a double pivot of Rice and Mainoo.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think again, Mainoo's another player that should have been used more, probably earlier in the games in the group stage, and we didn't really use him, which is a shame. Okay, we brought him on yesterday. He got a half of football, but we haven't used him enough for my liking. We're going to touch on Cole Palmer. We've talked about Cole Palmer. I'm the same as you, Curtis. I love Cole Palmer. Sorry, Arsenal fan or not, I love him. I think he's a fantastic player. I think he's one of the best young players of this generation. This kid is going to go far. Now, I was very excited when Southgate picked him. For me, it was an obvious choice to select Cole Palmer. He came on yesterday, and for me, he looked bright. He looked like one of the brightest players on the pitch. He looked like he was trying to pass the ball forward. He was doing all of the things that we haven't seen enough of in this tournament. And I thought we had a good performance. He wasn't on for particularly long, but I think we had him on long enough to give bit of a flavour of what he offered, and I thought he did very well. I just don't know why he's not been trusted more. I mean, who would you want to take a penalty for you? Who would you want in that position, one-on-one with the goalkeeper? There's no one better than Cole Palmer, and I completely agree also that he's hugely versatile, so versatile. I agree, false nine, he could do it. Left wing, right wing, cam. Wherever you want to put him. This kid has got so much talent, and it hurts. It hurts to see him not being used for me. Now, a lot of people I've spoken to about him, there's mixed opinions, believe it or not, Curtis. You and I are on the same wavelength here. But there are a lot of fans that I've spoken to, oh, well, still young, nah. For me, this is the equivalent. He's a Gaza type player for me. He's that good. Now, please tell me if you think I'm overhyping, Curtis. Tell me your thoughts on Cole Palmer.
My friends, some of my Chelsea friends have been getting onto me all season, saying how good he is, and I was like, oh, maybe they're getting carried away. But obviously, I'm trying to think. He didn't feature when he played Arsenal at the Emirates. I think he was unavailable for that
He's
game.
done well, yeah.
I'm trying to think if he played when we played them away. But that side, the couple of times I've seen him play for Chelsea, he's looked good. And the thing is, this kid's talented, man. And he's versatile. So even if he started yesterday on the left wing, I don't think he would have been there passing the ball back continuously to Kieran Trippier. And also because he's versatile, he can play a few positions like he's touched on. He can play as a false nine, but behind we could have played him instead of maybe Bellingham and had him sitting in the pocket behind Kane, Tony, or Watkins, or we could have had him operating just as a false nine instead of Harry Kane. He could have played. He could have played even instead of a Gallagher. So he could have been there trying to play as like a right-sided 10. He could even be there and replace obviously Saka on the right. Obviously, it's kind of hard because obviously Southgate has his allegiances to certain players, and that's why obviously Southgate's been doing certain activities to kind of shoehorn certain people into the team. But for me, even prior to yesterday, I would have minded seeing Jude Bellingham or Phil Foden dropped to get Palmer in the squad. And fair enough, like some people were saying, like yesterday, performance was brilliant from Palmer. Like, we can clearly see why he should certainly start. And I know it's been an argument last few days. People were saying he should start over Saka. Some people say no, you shouldn't. But the thing is, where we've got options, we can still keep. Because what I enjoyed seeing yesterday was some of those intricate passes between Mainoo and Palmer yesterday, and some of them triangles. So it makes me think like yesterday we could have still started Saka, but we could have certainly dropped Foden or Bellingham. And if we dropped, for example, Bellingham, we could have had Palmer sitting in the pocket behind Harry Kane, Or better still, we could have just played, rather than play Gallagher, we could have just had Cole Palmer sitting there as that right-sided 10, because then we would have had Saka, Palmer, Bellingham playing triangles. So it would have worked. And then, obviously, just for me, it just would have worked a bit better. Even I'd have also liked to have seen, obviously, Anthony Gordon start. I just think it would have brought us a bit more balance down that left-hand side. I know he only came on for a few minutes, so we can't really give him a rating, but for me, he just would have given a bit more versatility to the squad, because we'd have been able to play the ball out from Trippier to Gordon, or Walker to Saka or to Palmer. So hopefully, I'm just hoping I've seen the next game that Southgate's got to get it right, because we've been so lucky with this draw. Like they said, we're not going to be playing anyone big till the end if we do get that far. And obviously, we could have had Netherlands, but obviously, like you say, we've been tasked with Slovakia. So we've got on paper people saying easiest fixture, but the reality is obviously you can't overlook any opponent, and we have to treat each. Similar to boxing, same with football, you have to treat every opponent with respect. Set some terms of formation and line up for the next fixture.
Yeah, completely agree. Completely agree with you. Like, have we ever had this is the irony, isn't it? Have we ever had a better chance of going far in a tournament? And it just so happens that we are in a position where we are playing the worst football that we have done since probably Euro 2016. But I'm going to give Palmer a 7 out of 10 for yesterday. I thought he was good. I think he deserves that rating. I can't go higher than that, but for a substitute 20-minute appearance, 7 out of 10 is a very good rating. He looked lively, and I want to see him start. I want less of the pragmatism, Curtis, less of the, predictable substitutions, defensive handbrake on. We need a manager that's going to let the handbrake off. Now, Southgate has to do that. It's his best chance of winning a tournament. And I would suggest his last chance to win a tournament for England, because I think he will be leaving after this. So we've got to turn it around. We'll end with this because this is a short, sweet half an hour that we're going live on. And I know that you want to watch some football yourself. So we'll end with this. First of all, our friend Jamie Waffles Footy, who everybody on this podcast will know well, talks about the 3-punch combination. Like, subscribe, comment. Talked about boxing. So please do that, whether you've watched this live or whether you are watching after the fact. Please like, subscribe, comment. Curtis, I'll get you to give your handles in a second. But just before we do that, England versus Slovakia. Are we going to get through, Curtis? What's your prediction?
I don't like to be pessimistic. The sad reality is I don't think we're going to win the game, but I'd love to. Like, I have to be realistic. Like, I can't. I really. And this current kind of negative, pragmatic football under Southgate, I can't see winning. But if he gets the lineup right, if we see Gordon start on the left, if we see maybe Rice and Maynard double pivot with Cole Palmer there, operating as a false 9 or as a 10. It might work. Or it's all down to the midfield and the left wing and the right wing. So it's basically the midfield and the forwards. If he gets it right, Southgate gets it right, then we might have a chance. But he's got to drop Kane and put a Watkins or a Tony there. We want to see Gordon in there on the left, and in the midfield, we might have to drop a Foden. We might have to drop Bellingham. We might see Menu in there. We'd like to see Palmer. Even I wouldn't mind seeing Eze, even if it's like Rice, Eze, and it could be Rice, Eze, and Foden, or Rice, Eze, and Palmer. He's got to get it over the line. The thing is, what frustrates me is we've got some of the best talent in the world. Most of our players come from the Prem. Most of the players in our team, most of the players in England got our Prem-proven players, or certainly the best in the respective. A lot of them, even if they're not playing for the Prem anymore, they've come from the Prem and now play abroad in some of the other good leagues. So for me, he's got to get over the line. So it'd be disappointing if we do go out, but I wouldn't be surprised if we go out. But I certainly would love to win on Sunday. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you're right, Curtis. I think, to be honest, we could be looking at extra time and penalties, even at this early stage, because I think Slovakia will struggle to break down our defence. I wouldn't back them necessarily to do much in attack, but that doesn't mean we will either. So I can see a dull 0-0 a little bit like last night, with it going all the way, maybe. And that, well, as we know, penalties are a complete lottery, and we don't have the best record. But we'll see. I mean, like you say, he's got to get the lineup right. He's got to go much more attacking. He's got to take the handbrake off, and he's got to say to the players, "Go out there and express yourself." But I don't think he'll do that because he's too safe. He's had games to do that. He's had years to do that. Even in Euro 2020, I didn't think we played particularly attacking football at times. Even in the World Cup just gone, we had some dodgy games. In Qatar 2022, we had a 0-0 with, I believe it was the US. That was a surprise result. But we'll see. I don't know what we're going to get. I don't know who he will choose. I think he'll go with a similar lineup, unfortunately, because he doesn't seem to be learning his lessons. And well, as we've seen as Arsenal fans, if you do the same thing again and again and again and again and again, things don't change. And we had that at the latter end of the Wenger years, and things needed to change. So I think ultimately Southgate, after this tournament, probably needs to move on. And we need a fresh perspective and a fresh impetus. For Slovakia, I'm going to make an ambitious prediction that we'll win 1-0 after extra time. That's an ambitious prediction, Curtis. This is how badly we're playing.
Well, 1-0 smashing game. It wouldn't surprise, because if you did say, because it's lost, it is the final 16. I take it. So basically, we're at the knockout stages, right? Is that pretty much the way it is now? So it was 90 minutes, then extra time. Was it 15 minutes extra time each side, and then it's pens.
Yeah.
So yeah, this. He's got to get it done in 90 minutes. I can't have it. I don't think for all of us, we can't have another repeat of the England-Italy final what we had three years ago, where he didn't win it in 90 minutes and then we went to extra time and pens. I can't have that. Yeah.
We don't want more heartbreak. Well, there we go. That was a short, sweet chat about England. Anybody that popped in, I know there were a few people that did pop in earlier. Thank you very much for watching us. Anybody who's watching after the fact, please like, subscribe, comment, support the channels. I'm AGN Entertainment on YouTube, AGN Football on TikTok, and also Instagram. Curtis, go ahead. Tell our viewers your handles, please.
I'm clocking Curtis on TikTok and YouTube. Obviously, myself, Adam here, and obviously Jamie Waffles Football. We're content creators here, related to Arsenal, but also general football. And, hopefully we might even branch out to other sports as well. Obviously, myself and Adam, obviously, we're both season ticket holders for Arsenal. So, we're there every home game. So we'll be able to provide, pre-match predictions and also pre-match interviews and post-match interviews. And some of the away games as well, we'll look to try and cover them, maybe not either at the away game or certainly, at the pub watching at the Tollington, etc. So remember to like the video, subscribe to our channels and share the videos.
Absolutely. Definitely couldn't have said it better myself. And if you fancy coming down to watch our reactions to the England game, we will both be in the Tollington. Shout out the Tollington, right next to the Emirates. Great place to go and watch football. Right, that's it for this evening, everybody. Stay safe, take care, and enjoy the next